Welcome to the October 28th virtual event for the Coast Division of the NMRA. Our focus today is on a few specific items. We're going to talk first about the auction. We have a confirmed date and we're ready to go. So you need to start hopefully planning. I think we talked about the date we thought we were going to have it. We'll do that. The convention, a little update on the convention. Then we're going to have a great update on LocoFi, and then we'll just close with modeling. So first off, we are on for December 3rd. That will be at the Alameda Mastic Senior Center where we've been before. Seems to be an ideal location, easy access in and out. We'll have a clinic sometime in the morning, 10 or 10:30. Item check-in and viewing will be starting at 10:30. 10:30 to noon. We may be checking in items a little bit earlier, but definitely if you come by 10:30, we should be in good shape. Business meeting at noon, and then auction starts right after the business meeting. So that will be on December 3rd. We're just going to go with an open lunch. So either bring your own lunch or plan on something else. If we can get someone to help with a lunch, we'll change that when we get there. Any questions or comments, thoughts on that? No. Second, I just wanted to do a couple of updates on the convention. If you haven't registered, go ahead and I'll put the link in the chat. We have great room rates. It's great for especially folks in the Bay Area because if you come down on Thursday morning and go home Saturday night, you only have 2 rooms in the hotel. I'd encourage you to come both on Wednesday night. Makes it a lot easier to get up on Thursday morning and then stay over for the banquet on Saturday night and the breakfast on Sunday. But if you want to really minimize costs, you can make it a 2-night hotel visit. So it gets relatively inexpensive. One of the things I like to do is I'll put the website up, check the website out. We started putting a number of layout tours up. So you'll see some of those. The one there that I've been telling folks need to be cognizant of, Jack Burgess, the Yosemite Valley Railroad, one of the, I guess I'd say seminal layouts in the last 25 years of last century. When he built it has really been amazing. Double deck layout, one of the first layouts, specific prototype on a specific point in time. And Jack really was almost as much a historian of the Yosemite Valley as a model railroader. So it's an amazing layout. He's actually announced he's going to take it out in October. He's decided to tear it out. So if you haven't seen it, this is a great opportunity at the convention to go see that, along with layouts like Bob Brown's, etc. We're starting to get some clinics up on the website. You'll start to see more and more clinics show up there. If you're interested in doing a clinic, let me know. And finally, we have 3 prototypes. We're confirmed at Ardenwood. We're planning an event at Niles Canyon, and we're discussing with Bart about doing an event at Bart. So, if you have your layout, go up on the website. It's easy to put the date in to have your layout be open. If you'd like to do a clinic, propose a clinic, they're both online forms, really easy to fill out. If you've got some text about a clinic, it'll take you about 1.5 to 2 minutes to fill out the form. And if you're interested in adopting a prototype, or if you're close to one of the things we are looking is for some volunteers to take on adopting a prototype and helping set up the event with that prototype. So we're kind of working with Jack at Ardenwood, but we really need someone who kind of has a PCR convention view for both Niles Canyon and Bart. So with that, I'm going to close and throw it over to Piyush and go ahead and introduce Piyush. Piyush is from Dublin. He's founded a company called LocoFi, which has a really unique value proposition, which is that you have a decoder, and that decoder is connected to your phone using Wi-Fi. So instead of using Bluetooth, using Wi-Fi, which has a number of characteristics that are very nice for this kind of application. And one of the other things he's done that I think is interesting, I'm sure he'll talk about is the idea that it's a fairly open architecture, so you're able to import sounds into the system that you have. And so, if you, there is a, I think there's a real interesting potential. You're seeing a bit of this of sounds becoming available on the internet, specifically, people's recording. So anyway, with that, I'll throw it to him and let him talk about his product.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil, for having me on the show yet again. My name is Piyush Garg, and I am one of the founders of LocoFi. So I'm just gonna start my screen here. So, okay, so everyone can see my screen, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, LocoFi. Many of you are probably familiar with LocoFi, and so if yes, these some of these slides may look a bit repetitive, but if you are new to LocoFi, then I'll just go over some of the information. And I've appeared on this show, I think, a couple of times before as well. And Phil has been asking me, but I did not really have an update so far. But today, we have a great new update I'm really excited to share. So we were founded back in 2018, like more than 5 years ago. And since then, we've been technology disruptors and innovators, and the first to bring Wi Fi and onboard sound without DCC. Why without DCC? We will see in a moment. And since then, we have seen many, many more jump the wagon, and we are glad to be at the forefront of it. We are not just digital; we call ourselves super digital. And since then, that is 2018, we've just been getting more and more attention. Uh, so we were the winner of 2019 Model Railroader Readers' Choice Award in the category of innovation in electronics in the non-DCC category, and it's an award that we won again like in 2020, and because these awards are like based on like the customers and readers, and so basically what does it tell about LocoFi? That our customers, they love us, like whosoever. So we've got worldwide customers. Now we have customers in more than 20 countries. I believe last presentation it was around like 15, and now it's 20. And our customers, they range from kids all the way up to 100+ year olds, and they are like using smartphone and all the LocoFi modules and cool stuff. So and we've appeared in numerous magazines, and some of the top magazines in the in the whole world. Like we've appeared in some of the magazines in France, Germany, and so on. Uh, and we have transcripts available for those languages in in the news section of our website. And if you wanna go ahead and read some of the reviews there, and I can show you the news section a bit later on our website. And we've been to a couple of national train shows, and in fact, our start was the local Pleasanton train show, and we hope to be present again once more at the upcoming Pleasanton train show. And wherever we went, we just have always drawn crowds. So, and not only that, we are a proud member of the NMRA partnership program, wherein we offer exclusive discounts to NMRA members. And in turn, for all the sales that happen because of that, we donate a part of it back into the hobby. Right, the LocoFi journey. Uh, So as I mentioned before, we started back in 2018 with one basic feature, and that was the ability to perform software upgrades over the air. Now we have laid a foundation for a robust and scalable system where features can be added incrementally over time. And it's been proven time and again as we have released multiple updates since then. 2019 and 20, we introduced the customizable app settings and the customizable locomotive settings. And since then, we have just been adding more and more to that. And 2021, we introduced consisting, a totally new way of doing consisting. And since then, we have been focused on coming out with Steam modules, which we did at the start of 2022, but we did not have the firmware released yet. We're working on it. And for many reasons, uh, we it took a bit longer than expected, and only very recently we came out with the Steam firmware. And and 2024 and beyond, we plan to bring many more updates such as accessory controls, IO support, Amrit, our dead rail sort of solution, and the high current modules. So now the cool thing about this timeline is that if you purchase the module, say back in 2018, you've been getting all the subsequent updates and that too at no additional cost. And these updates have been OTA, like over the air. You simply purchase the module and new features just keep becoming available at no additional cost. And with the exception of features that require like a hardware change, you're just getting updates with no need to purchase anything new or a new module. And remember, all you do is upgrade the app when it is available by downloading it from the Google Play Store or Amazon App Store. We are still working on the Apple iOS app. And when you launch the app and you go running a train, you'll be prompted if the firmware needs an upgrade. And all you have to do is tap, and the updates themselves do not require any special programming or uploading like equipment. And yeah, that's it. So, so what is LocoFi? We already talked about LocoFi as a brand in the previous slides. So, however, LocoFi is also synonymous with many other different things. For example, uh, technology. We also refer to LocoFi as like simplify locomotive operations through the use of Wi-Fi technology, or simplify Wi-Fi LocoFi. That's our tagline. And another way we refer to LocoFi is our modules. We also refer to them as LocoFi modules. And so it's essentially context based depending on what you're referring to when you say LocoFi. We have also been referred to as a system, and we have embraced the term, though it is not exactly that. One reason, and you'll see in a moment, is that we do not tie into a particular protocol or equipment or standards. We let you, the modelers, free. In other words, free to choose your own integration, that is your own power supply, your own Wi-Fi router, if you need one, and your own smartphone, etc. So much so, you can even implement your own protocol, even DCC based, edit your own sounds, or any combination of these things. And whatever level you want to take it to, it's up to you. So uh, that's the power. And so let's start with that's from the technology perspective, system perspective. Let's see, LocoFi in more detail. So we'll start with what LocoFi is not. So definitely not wiring, or very, very minimal wiring. With dead rail, it's absolute zero. That means no extra equipment like boosters, computers, adapters, programmers, command stations, bus feeder drop switches, circuit breakers, auto reversers. The list goes on. Frog users, reverse loop electronics, etc. There is not even, you don't even need to solder the track. absolutely no headaches, and you don't have to go under the table, so you save your head both ways. You save your sanity, and you actually don't get hurt. So we do not believe in complexity. More complexity means more points of failure. It becomes more error prone and it's more maintenance. And you like fix one thing and another breaks. And you're always fixing things and constantly miss the fun. So let's see what LocoFi is. So LocoFi is these four simple things. Number one is a power supply that can be DC, DCC, battery, or even AC. And the power supply can be any voltage ranging from 7 volts to 24 volts. Number two, the LocoFi module itself. And number three, the LocoFi app that is free. And number four, the optional Wi-Fi router. We'll see later how why I'm calling it an optional, because the LocoFi module itself can act as a access point, also called router, and how much flexibility we get in terms of ability to network and connect with locomotives. So, in fact, we do not even need the external router in case of like smaller layouts, and that's a very big, one of the big differentiators with regards to other networking technologies out there. So as you can see, you're free to use your own smartphone, your own access point, and your own power supply. And there are not many things to integrate, first of all. So just three basic things. So for example, you can use any old laptop power supply. It's free. It's lying around in your house, and whatever the voltage it is, as long as it's within 7 volts to 24 volts, just you just need to create what we call a speed profile. We'll see that in a moment for that voltage, and you are just running prototypically on that layout. And you can even use your old DC power packs if you have them lying around. For example, those rail power, rail master, typos, and all that. They're all pulsed DC power supplies, and they just need to be rectified, filtered, and you can use them as well. Now, the control being wireless or specifically Wi-Fi, we have managed to get rid of the traditional signal on the wire, or like signal that rides on the power. So now we can power our device separately, or in other words, we have now separated the power from the control. And this is an idea we postulated back in 2018. It's funny that at that time, when we talked about it, no one would get it. But now everyone is actually talking about it. They're using these words, separation of power from control. And it's just another example of where we broke the general perception of how things should be done. And I'll mention it again. It's the ability that is going wireless that makes it actually possible, to separate this power component from the control aspect. And then we can power our systems our way. We designed it even that you can power it not only with like DCC power supply, or DC, AC, or even a battery. And so the power is with the locomotive. Even the brain is inside the locomotive. It's not somewhere outside. You know? And and you obviously have a wide range of voltage to choose from. So basically power it your way. So no maintenance, no headache, and obviously more fun. So how does LocoFi work? In its simplest form, you connect to the Loco network, also called the SSID, directly, and then launch the LocoFi app and run the train. So this is sort of how most of the other wireless system works. You just directly make a connection and just start running the train. But in the case of Wi-Fi, the way it works, it goes a little beyond that. It actually sets up what you call a local area network, and the devices on the network are talking to each other, and that lets us, open up a lot of possibilities in terms of having large layouts, a lot of locomotives, lot of engineers, unlimited range virtually, and and really what it should be, for a model railroad. And so I'll give a demo in a moment, but to start, you basically go to your wireless connections on your smartphone, and you would see all these wireless networks available. And one of them would appear to be uh, like a LocoFi network. Basically, the module is acting like an access point. So you connect to it, and it will say you don't have an internet and everything, but you're connected to it directly. Now, you go ahead and launch your app, and you will see the locomotive on the main screen, and you can manage it, and the dashboard will appear, and you can start running the train. It's that simple, a direct connection. Now, let's take it a step further, and let's connect to an external access point. So we have an access point here called, LocoFi demo, and we connect our phone to that, and we have a way in which we, using our phone, we connect, or we add the locomotive to this network as well. And once we have done that, both the devices are on this particular WLAN, and they're talking to each other. So this is another way you can have, directly talking to one loco, but if you keep adding multiple locos, you can control multiple locos. Not only that, you can have many engineers, each controlling their set of locomotives. And again, as we'll see later, you will see which engineer is controlling which locomotive. As you can see in the screen, so this is engineer 08, as you can see on the top, and there is really, there is engineer 06 and 10, which are also on the network, and they are each controlling another engine. Another thing that you will notice is this DRG GP9M is actually a consist, and it has, three other helpers behind it. So that's how like the main scheme would work. So this is like the most usual case, I would say. Multiple users and multiple. But it can go another step further. By the way, I just wanted to point out to this previous screen, as you can see on the top bar, the currently selected locomotive is the consist that we're talking about, DRGP9, and there is a next tab. So that's the currently one selected, which says Southern. So you can actually see multiple locomotives on one screen, and you can just, flip between them, and, keep operating without actually having to do a lot of tasks, so that, you don't really lose control of your trains. And the other engineers can also do something very similar. Now, going another step for like really, really large layouts, you can actually set up a mesh network. So you have a single SSID, that's access point, uh, identifier, and you can set up multiple access points, throughout the layout, so that you have like complete signal coverage, and you can have engineers and locomotives all over the place, and manage them the way you want. And that literally translates to virtually unlimited range, and unlimited number of people on the network. The load is distributed. And another cool thing about LocoFi is like the devices are talking to each other. The engineers are talking to the trains are talking to the engineers, and it's all updated real time. So we do have some couple of special cases. I believe I sort of mentioned them, that you can, let me list it. You can have a locomotive itself as an access point, and that's how you will receive the module in the first place. it will come up, boot up as an access point. You'll connect your phone directly to it as you would connect to, your home router, and you just start operating it. Now, because it is acting like an access point, you can actually add more locomotives to it as clients and more smartphones to the network as, clients, and then you can have like a network of, operating trains. And the other aspect is your smartphone itself. When you set it up as like a hotspot, you are actually creating an access point out of it. The app itself can act as a client to that smartphone, and you can have more smartphones and locomotives as clients connected to it. And again, uh, that could be another configuration. So there is just crazy kind of possibilities in the way you can network all these things. I believe you will remember from, if somebody knows, the Ethernet days, there used to be like a central Ethernet switch, and the wires would go out to all the computers. So it sort of simulates just wireless. Like we have this access point, like acting like a switch here, and you have all these devices, all the IoT devices connected to it, and you can just do pretty much a lot of things. So with that, I mean, if there is questions regarding this, I can go over in more depth. I mean, it's really simple, but the fact it can get a lot of possibilities here. The way you can network things, it can sometimes seem confusing, uh, but from a modeler's perspective, either you can connect directly or you can just have a third-party access point and connect, add all the locomotives to it. So it's that simple. And so let's talk about like installing. And so in the case of
Before you do that, this is Phil. Just a question on security. So, talk a little bit about how, if I've got a locomotive that's my locomotive, how is it secured relative to my device, or other devices that have the application running?
Yes, very good question. If you remember in one of the screens we saw, and I'm gonna show a demo as well. Each engineer can own their own locomotive. They claim it like, okay, I am gonna manage this locomotive. For the other engineers, it will appear, that the other engineer is already managing this locomotive, so you are not able to manage that. It's not
Okay.
like you just type in
Well,
an address and anybody can start driving it. No.
so if it's if but if, for example, I've got a locomotive sitting on the track, therefore it's powered, and I walk away far enough that the Wi-Fi connection is lost, or I leave for whatever reason. If someone has the application, is there a security control that that locomotive is not generally available, but is somehow locked to me as an individual, so other
Yes,
people
absolutely.
can't take it?
Mhm. So there is a setting we have in the settings screen where you can actually lock the locomotive, especially for a direct connection.
Right.
So yeah, so once you lock it, nobody is able to actually add that locomotive to their own network. So
Right.
so that's
So,
like
so by the way, the reason I bring this up is that for those who do things at public venues, whether it's modular or at a club
absolutely.
that's open to the public, the
Mhm.
problem is if you leave a locomotive sitting on a track, everything works really well. You see it on a track that happens to be powered. For some reason, your phone disconnects, the app gets closed in your phone. Having that engine locked to your phone, I think, is really important. Um,
Yes, and yeah, yeah, absolutely. We
so
we actually add this kind of scenarios in some of the train
yeah,
shows
cool.
we've been to and some clubs, and
Right.
we actually were able to visualize this, and we actually brought about this particular feature. And one of the other features or important thing that comes out of separating, this power from control is, for example, in the case of a dead rail, the power is on board on the locomotive. Now, a locomotive is running with the, let's say, it's not just sitting on the track; it's, let's say, moving, and you, for some reason, your phone battery dies. You just move away, or there is like a wall obstruction comes, and you suddenly lose signal. Now we have this feature built into it where obviously the locomotive and the phone are like constantly talking to each other. It's like a bi-directional communication. So once the locomotive detects that it's not able to communicate back to the throttle, it will shut down. It will basically stop right there. So that's another one of the things that we saw, like with these kind of systems, which are needed, like the important.
You noticed an increase in your PG&E bill.
Uh, uh, I don't know. I mean, I would say the DCC power supplies would probably take a lot more. I don't know.
Well, actually, I was going to ask related to that is there should be a way to steal or take back a locomotive. I mean, during an operating session, you come along, engineer A is operating a locomotive, leaves it, finishes the run and runs off and grabs another locomotive without releasing the first one. So how do you, because people forget to do that, right? Or they have to remember to release the locomotive so that someone else can reuse it later. You have to have a way of overriding that somehow. Is there a way to do that?
Mm-hmm. I will show that in the moment.
Oh, okay, good.
You actually have a button where you say manage or you release. And locomotive can just keep running, you just release it. The other guy can just pick it up and continue from there on.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go on breaks and come back. And so it's pretty seamless. So I'll quickly go over like how the installation itself is done. So, and I am going, this going to be a couple of slides here. Like for the case of the power supply being DC or DCC, we have our motor. The speaker comes pre-wired. It's a very high-end premium speaker. We always say that it comes pre-baffled and everything, just optimum. But for some reason, if you want to use your own speaker, you're free to use that. But we provide that as part of the package, and it comes pre-wired. The next thing you have to do is just wire the tracks, the red and the black, two wires. And two wires go to the motor, the orange and the gray. And the usual three, white, yellow, and blue, go to the lights. And that's it, you're done. In the case of dead rail, you just don't use track power, you instead use a battery. And rest of the connections remain the same. And obviously, you can have some extra circuitry, for charging the battery, or some kind of switch like a like SPDT, like single pull double throw. You can put it in charge or operating mode and all those things. But this is how a LocoFi module is pretty much powered. And the third interesting case is the use of AC and pulse DC. So if you have space in your locomotive, then you can have a bridge rectifier and electrolytic capacitor, which is pretty large component generally. So, but if you have space, then adding these two components, you can even run it on AC and all those older power supplies, and and it and this kind of situation you can put also to use in a DC or DCC power supply situation, because it can act even like a tiny power backup. And if you have a pretty large enough, electrolytic capacitor, I have one which is now these are available, and I can see this is like a 10,000 microfarad, 35 volts, which is pretty good, pretty decent, and this really provides enough power backup for like minor dirty track. You just don't need to worry about like most of the situation, unless you have a really long stretch of track which is not powered. So especially in HO scale, when you install these modules like in tender, pretty much you do have enough space to at least house these components. And I've done that, and it's pretty useful. So that's how, as far as the installation goes. And from the perspective of power supplies, I'll just repeat that DC, you can have these wall warts, these computer type of power supplies, these regulated power supplies, DCC power supplies, and so on. And if you have an old laptop power supply lying around, just use it. Do not worry about the voltage. And battery power, you can use anywhere from 2S in the case of LiPos, 2S to 5S. So you can even use a 9-volt battery, or even like Lions, or any kind of battery, or nickel metal hydride, or whatever you want. And in the case of I think I missed there. Yeah, the AC and pulsed DC supplies, all those older power supplies, and including the AC power supplies can be used. Right. So I just put up this slide to
Wait,
show
before
how.
you go, do you support 110 volts on the rails?
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
No. So the after you no, that would be too much. So that's where, if you see the red type of power supply here, the AC, this one, this actually converts. It's a step down transformer from 110 to, like, a lower voltage. And if in case you do have, so after you filter the power supply, the AC voltage that probably was appearing as 18 volts would actually come out to be about 25, 26 volts DC. And you may want to kind of keep it at a lower throttle there, or maybe put a regulator, like a DC regulator. So there's plenty of ways to achieve that. I mean, the main thing to remember is that input to the module should not exceed 24 volts. Unofficially, I would say we can go up to 28 volts, but because there are some power surges and spikes and so on, I wouldn't recommend that. So we kind of officially list it as 24 volts, and that's also a very general acceptable voltage. And the lowest is like 7 volts, which obviously is good enough for 2S type of LiPos. Right. So I put up this slide for the high current modules. For the larger scales, I know there are people who say sometimes, the engines would need even tens of amps, and there is this external H bridges available, which basically take the direction and the PWM signal, and they would output quite a bit of power. And so this is just one example product we came across. One of our customers pointed to us, like he used it himself, and he said, this is how I'm doing it. Like, yeah, that's a great idea. So we can actually start exposing those outputs for you until we make our high current modules. And one important thing that is a result of this combination is that we can leave the H bridge as a separate component, where you can use your own again, like, depending on the amperage that you need, rather than we coming up with 4 different types of modules, which would confuse the people. Like, this is a 4 amp module, this is an 8 amp module, this is a 12 amp module. And then tomorrow the requirements for that module may just change. From 4 amps, you might need like an 8 amp. I mean, you don't want to swap out, the whole module. So the thing is, if you have like just a Wi-Fi module, which is like LocoFi module, and then you just have the PWM direction exposed, you just interface it with any H bridge, and you're good to go. And obviously, we can then also integrate like a bigger speaker and external circuitry to amplify the lights and so forth. So this is pretty much all we need to run like large scales. Right. So another slide I have on is for the dead rail. So nowadays we know like we are seeing a bigger and bigger push towards dead rail, and as with any technology, obviously there are pros and there are cons. Uh, for those who have been there, cleaning tracks and just trying to get your locomotive crossed at one spot on the track every single time without it either stopping or rebooting the entire layout, and all those who found it really frustrating to deal with all the mess of wires that needs to be laid out for providing the power and making sure there are no signal losses or voltage drops, like investment after investment into all kinds of equipment. I guess it's a huge relief not having to do any of that. And however, everyone knows that this sort of convenience comes at the cost of extra work of keeping the batteries charged and possibly a struggle to fit all of it under the shell of the locomotive during the installation. It's probably more possible in the case of like a steam, the installation goes in the tender, or for those who do not mind having a trailing car or like an AB unit with the trailing unit is like a dummy unit, you just put the batteries there. So uh, we know some customer like who use N scale and they just use a permanently attached trailing car and put the module and the battery in there and then they're just running it. So obviously it's that trade-off. And but as far as LocoFi is concerned, dead rail and LocoFi is just natural. The fact that we can separate the power from control makes it really easy. And the power, we can have like straight DC, and there is nothing better DC than battery. And obviously, I mentioned before we can use a variety of batteries out there. So, right. So to summarize, simplify Wi-Fi LocoFi is simplification with LocoFi through the use of ubiquitous IoT-based Wi-Fi technology, which is scalable, reliable, and you can have unlimited engineers, unlimited range, and you get to power it your way. Comes with onboard sound that is user customizable. Uh, I'll probably need to have a separate presentation or like a clinic or something to show how you can get started with customizing your own sounds. Uh, Comes with prototypical operation, no complicated setup, no lost commands, no no complex firing, and no extra equipment. Easy to configure, easy to use, and easy to maintain. And let's see all of it like in action. So once you have installed the module, the next thing we need to do is Phil, can you spotlight the other screen as well? I'll just want to go over the demo here.
The share too, or do you want to stop the share?
Oh, I can stop the share.
That's okay. I can stop the share. There we go.
Yeah, we will probably not need the share. Or can we have the share as well? I mean,
yeah, when you have the share, it just people will see it it won't be spotlighted as much anymore. Right now it's bigger. When you put the share on, it's going to be pretty small.
oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I'll then we'll leave it like that. I'll show the slides later then. So once you receive the module, you install the module. So the next thing we do is we download and install the LocoFi app. So I've uninstalled the app from this phone. I'm just gonna go through the process of installing it. So first I go to my network, and I'll just connect to one of the networks that has, the internet connectivity, or like the first time to download the app. Go to Play Store, search for LocoFi, and
There, that's better.
okay, and we install it. It's a pretty lean application, so once it is installed, we'll actually go back and put it here. So I am gonna first connect my phone to a locomotive. So once I received the module, I installed it, I put it on the track. Here, initially the name would be a little bit weird, like loco dash, a bunch of numbers. I renamed the loco, so that's why it appears like this. So I select this in the wireless networks. So now I'm connected to that locomotive. It says connected to device cannot provide internet. And then I launch the app. Let's say, so once if there is like an pop-up, something like that, just say yes here. And let's say I'm John, and I say, okay, that's my engineer name. It would appear right here. And automatically the device discovery starts. So it starts discovering all the engineers and all the locomotives and all the consists. And since we have only one locomotive available here, because that's what we have connected to, that shows up. We click manage, and we see the dashboard, and you can just start it up, and and so on. Anyway, so next I'm gonna try to show you how to add it to a network. So I'm just gonna, so that's what I was talking about. Somebody asked this question, to manage and release. I'll see that, we'll see that in the perspective of multiple engineers as well. So release, we exit the app, we go back to network here, and one thing we need to do, because I believe it's a security concern in Android of some sort, is if you connect to an external network from the Android system itself, you have to actually forget it before an application can actually connect to it directly. So what we're going to do is we connect to this network called LocoFi demo, and that's a third party. It's a Linksys router or something. And now my phone is connected to that, and once it is connected to that, now I am gonna launch the LocoFi app, and you will see a bunch of locomotives already present on the network. And as you can see, this is a consist with all the trailing locomotives talking about, all the helpers. And let's try to add this new loco. So there's a menu on the top right.
Hang on a second, Piyush. Something's not clear to me. So what you're saying is now your browser app is talking to the Wi-Fi router, right? The Linksys.
Yep.
How do the locomotives on the network know what access? Because now you're not talking to the locomotives. When the locomotives just power up dead, how do they know how do they authenticate with that access point? How do they? You could be in a neighborhood. There could be 10 access points. How do you tell? When you haven't connected to the decoder in the locomotive, how does it know what access point to authenticate with?
Yeah, so that is actually stored on the locomotive itself. We store which access point to connect to.
So and how do you configure that?
I'm just going to show you.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
Because
yeah.
otherwise these things just don't magically appear. You have to
Yes, yeah, that's the interesting thing. Like we did not really create any magic here,
right.
but we just used the existing technology. We thought of some ways of how to do it really
Right.
simply. So,
By the way,
so
just so everybody knows, it's exactly the same way you get your Alexa linked up to your Wi-Fi app, right? You
Right.
download the Android app to your phone, it talks.
yeah, absolutely,
Alexa,
yeah,
you go into it and you configure what network you want your Alexa to connect to. It sends
That's
that
right.
to Alexa and say connect to. What Garsh is gonna tell you is they do exactly the same thing here. I mean, what's really cool about this, this is the thing that kind of you don't get if you think about Wi-Fi as a transport. Think about Wi-Fi as an ecosystem, and you're
yeah,
plugging into the ecosystem. And people have been figuring out how to do all this stuff in that ecosystem for the past 15 years and getting better and better. So you can take this best practices from that ecosystem and move them over into this environment. It's a really interesting thought process of technology abstraction. I mean, if you kind of think about it, I don't know how if anybody's ever read about the innovator's dilemma, but the innovator's dilemma is this idea that you're on a technology and there's a new technology coming and it seems totally abstracted. And all of a sudden, that technology enables a completely transformed market. Cell phones coming along, you had the concept of smartphones. Smartphones come out and traditional cell phones basically go away. That's what the innovator's dilemma is. The interesting thought process here is to think about DCC and to some extent a Bluetooth based system, but I would argue that that's part of the disruption. But you can make the argument that DCC is this technology that's on a specific curve. So there's all this design and development that's gone into it. Wi-Fi was always seen as just an extension of that core versus being the base. Once you make the change, then all of a sudden a lot of things change because you're not just changing the technology, you're changing the ecosystem. And I think that's what could be very interesting, in this space is you're able to leverage things that people have done very rapidly into an environment that extends out. And that doesn't just apply to software, it applies to the protocols, it applies to hardware. Because people are always innovating in this space and spending, they're spending literally millions and millions, if not billions of dollars trying to shrink and cost reduce this technology because they want to put it everywhere. So that's what
right.
makes it really, really interesting is you're really leveraging a scale that's like multiple orders of magnitude bigger than the DCC technology based scale, and call it, for lack of a better word, the DCC ecosystem. I mean, I'm sure finding a good DCC engineer is really hard. Finding people who understand, how to do IoT, how to do Wi-Fi enabled apps, how to do Wi-Fi integration for apps. I mean, I have so many apps that are Wi-Fi, so many devices that are Wi-Fi integrated. It's like a well-known technology. So it's a really interesting thought process that I think everybody needs to kind of think through about how this changes over the next few years. Anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
enough said.
Oh, no. So sometimes we don't even realize how many devices we are using actually as part of the IoT system in our house nowadays. So, yeah. So yeah, that's the reason. I mean, it was a grounds up approach without actually looking at more patchwork, to keep you know uh, working with DCC, for example, to keep supporting it. I mean, it's still possible the way again we have designed it. We can still interface with it, but we are not building on top of it because then we limit ourselves to what is possible. So yeah, going back to the question of how do we achieve it. So that locomotive we looked at previously, we connected to directly the MPDC 15 DC. So I am going to, it's still available as an access point out there. Now I'm gonna make it a client of this network I am connected to. So first I need to connect my phone to the network I want the locomotive to add to. So I'll go to the menu, I'll say add loco here, and it's just gonna ask me to accept a bunch of permissions. This is a part of Android, even though I'm like we are not tracking any location, but these permissions to show up devices is somehow part of that ecosystem of these permissions. And you will see this logo appears on the screen. And the fact that none of the other wireless devices appear is because we have actually prefixed the name of the access point with loco dash. So just in case there was another device out there on the network which had a loco dash prefix, it would again appear over here. That's highly unlikely. So we just see the name of the locomotive here, not the loco dash prefix. We select the locomotive, we say add to network. So I'm just gonna stop the video by I enter my password here. So I enter the Wi-Fi network password of the network I'm connected to. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna connect to this locomotive directly and send over the SSID and this
That's what I
password
thought.
information.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
how you're doing it.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then I would command the locomotive to reboot, and on reboot it would check if there is a setting available that it
Right.
needs to boot up from that.
Okay.
So yeah, exactly. So we're gonna do that here, and connect, and it says success. And if we come back to the main screen, it will refresh, and you should see that locomotive on the network here.
Now, Piyush,
And you can
are you using IP addresses to connect, or are you just using MAC addresses to interconnect? Are you using IP?
yes, I am using IP to do the communication.
So that actually means I could have an app across the country, and as long as I know the IP address of the locomotive, my throttle would work across the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah,
I
okay.
actually sometimes I just fall short of resources, but we are in the process of doing this thing. Like if you, for example, do like a VPN,
Yeah.
and from the phone, you could actually be running a train in France.
Yep. No, I see. Yep.
And the Wi-Fi, and that's another project we have in the pipeline, is to actually have like the video capability, because Wi-Fi supports it. It can have these high bandwidth. You can actually have a tiny little camera in the locomotive, and so you would be sitting here with your throttle and running a train in France, and you would be able to see what's on the track over there. So that's the kind of
I have a variation of that, which you may have thought of. Do it the other direction for audio. In other words, instead of the audio coming out of the speaker on the locomotive, which everybody hears, then have the audio come out on your phone so only you hear it, so you can have the sound as loud as you like and it doesn't disrupt everybody else.
Yeah, that certainly could be another variation. Yes.
Anyway, cool.
So it's not refresh. I believe I did forget it, because then it will not connect. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Add local. Maybe I do. I believe probably needs a little uh, reboot. Sometimes it does that. Just a second. We have like an older version of app. If that's what it has, then yeah. So you can see the locomotive appeared, and now we are on this network. So the next thing I was going to cover is yeah. So please note that as a module acting as an access point, the first direct connection, you can actually, if you want, I can show you that, but maybe in the interest of time, if you have, I'll show you. So when we were directly connected to this module, the UP-MP15DC, I could actually add more locomotives to that network. And so the only limitation is we can have up to like 8 clients, because the LocoFi chip in terms of the Wi-Fi itself is not like as powerful as like a third-party router. So there is a limitation of 8 devices, but for small networks, it's pretty decent. And another variation I can show is make the phone itself as a hotspot and then connect all the locomotives into it. And very cool thing about this particular Wi-Fi chip is it can not only act as an access point, but it can act as a client at the same time. And we utilize this feature to, create our consist, where you just carry the whole consist from one layout to another and just start running it. So we'll see that in a moment here. And I can give you a demo for all these features if you want. Now, so let's see how it works. Now, let's see, Bob visits John, and he wants to run the trains. So he would connect to the Wi-Fi network of the train. He'll connect his smartphone, and he will launch the app. And let's say Bob joined, and he would see. I hope you can see my screen. Just increase the brightness here. That helps. Now, John wants to run, the Steam V&O. And as you can see for Bob, that Steam train is now claimed by John. I cannot control it. But if I was to go on a break, I just release it and I say, Bob, can you just manage this train for me for some time? I'll be right back. And he can do that. And obviously, you can manage 2 trains here, and Bob can do the remaining 3 trains. And you click on any of the screen, you will be taken to these tabs at the top, which will tell you like which train. Now you can switch between these trains, like either by swiping the screen, or you can tap on the top thing. Now, similarly, and it detects if it's a steam engine or a diesel engine. And if it's a steam, you would see a different kind of dashboard. And if it's a diesel, then you would see a different. Now, another thing you will notice, I'll probably like use a pencil here to point. This is a single locomotive. That's a consist, and it's also blue. Now, if you were to click here and you long press on it, you would actually see all the helpers that are part of the consist. And this is the what we call the power of true multi-engineer, multi-train, environment. And like your train are yours, and you can operate multiple trains. And you can see you can do it from one single screen, and you can have as many locomotives as you want. So if anyone has any questions up to this point, I hope I didn't lose anyone. It's not confusing. It should be pretty simple. Yeah, please let me know.
Actually, Ken made a comment in the chat about the complexity of adding a loco. Yeah, but I think if I've had a large layout, and I want to have many operators over and they want to use this, my guess is you just the one time add the locomotives and set up their access points to your router. After that, any new participant that comes in doesn't have to do that. So it's not something that you do all the time, right? It's something you do once. You configure all the locomotives on that railroad to point to that router. Then any new operator that comes in, they open up the app, they'll see everything, and then they just touch it and away they go, right? So
Yes.
and the only issue is if I bring my locomotive from my house to your house, I might have to go through all those steps to tell that locomotive how to talk to your router. And then when I bring it home, I have to redo the steps so it talks to my router again.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So steps to actually add the locomotive, I do not think they're really hard as it is, except trying to understand the process that's going behind the scenes, and that's what I was trying to explain. That will definitely seem complicated because it is actually a convoluted way of doing this. But and that's as Phil was pointing out, that's how Alexa does it, and a lot of the IoT devices, that's how you add those devices to the network. Whether meet your like wireless printer you want to add to your network, this is how you actually do it.
Yeah.
And exactly. So this the process, you're connecting and then you're disconnecting from one network, connecting to directly to the device, sending the password over, the the network name over, and then asking it to reboot, and then you have this device, your phone connect back to the original network. All this is like a pretty complex sequence of steps, but in terms of doing it, it's probably not that complicated. But this is the way.
Now, theoretically, you should be able to set up the access point to not have a password, right? I mean, who cares if someone hacks your locomotive router, right? Is some Russian guy going to bother trying to run your locomotives remotely, right? So you may not care. I'm just thinking that means that you could have the decoder wake up and recognize, oh, I can only see one access point, or maybe there's a default name or something.
I'm a little concerned about that. I would not. Much as I don't like the competitive, the repetitive stuff of adding a locomotive, because I've had to do it several times. Every time I powered off of the control device, I've had to go through this whole rigmarole.
Right.
But I do have I use the house router for as the point rather than the device, the handheld device. So once I don't want that password being or any access to that.
Right. So what you're saying is if you don't have an isolated router just for the railroad, you wouldn't want someone else to get into your home router.
Yeah.
And that's fair. I was just thinking of trying to think of ways to make it simpler, but I'm surprised that you now, Frisch, you have there's a persistent memory in the decoder, right? So you can power off the decoder all you want. Whenever it wakes up, it's always going to talk to the same home router. You don't have to redo the programming.
Yes. I believe what Ken might be running into, and that's something which is not in our control, is all the smartphones, pretty much all the smartphones out there, they have an inbuilt programming into them that they need to connect to a network which provides internet. So if you ever lose,
I think a simple script for people doing it the first couple times would help. Just step A, step B, step C, do this, written down, and somebody can follow it. And after a while, it'll become automatic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, you're right. The problem happens when you run into some issues. For example, you do the steps, but you don't see the result. And that is what I was trying to explain. That might happen due to several reasons. One major reason is your smartphone trying to connect to something that is connected to internet. Now, I know customers, they say we just end up connecting to our home router. I can't connect my to my separate router which does not have internet, because the smartphone eventually tends to connect to the one that has internet, and then you just end up putting your trains on that net. Now, how you can avoid it is actually one interesting solution is have a smartphone. I mean, you can get smartphone as cheap as like $40. Have a smartphone dedicated to your train network. Do not even put a SIM card in it. Otherwise, it will even try to jump to your Wi-Fi, mobile network. And once you're on the mobile network, trying to, internet connectivity, you're not going to see your Wi-Fi access points, something that does not have internet and your trains are connected to. So having a dedicated phone.
I think we need to move along. This is bogging down in some real technical points
Yeah,
yeah,
Prakash, this is Phil. I actually wrote a note on this on multiple routers. I'll talk to you about that. But I guess just one question. So in the Apple world, an app can actually get access control to the Wi-Fi connection? Because I know like my GoPro does that. It'll come up and pop up and say wants to connect Wi-Fi to GoPro. And so it asks permission, but it connects. And the app is coming up, looking at the Wi-Fi list for something to be there that it wants to connect to, saying, I want to connect to this, and it changes the connection. I would wonder, it would surprise me if Android doesn't have a similar feature buried down somewhere in it. So you can actually have the app when it comes up, basically say, I want to take control of this, connect to a specific router, whether it's internet connected. Because I know the phones always want to connect you to the internet because that's what you really want to do with your phone mainly. So
Yeah. So we still do not have a iOS app, but we were developing it and it's like in the works. I was working with iPhones, iPhone 5 or 6. I remember working with that, and I found iPhone to be more notorious, automatically switching to something which is internet, and those devices will not even let you make a hotspot out of your own device if you do not have internet connectivity. For example, you wanted to disconnect from internet and still want to run trains, have like a local network set up with a hotspot. iPhones, I don't know if they allow it today, but that time I saw like they would not even allow that. So there is these, restrictions imposed by these device manufacturers that which we have to kind of go around. So as Ken said, let's moving along. So and now I just want to give a quick overview of how the settings look like. So for each locomotive, there is this three dots on the top right. And if it's a consist, it would say like, consist settings, and we'll have a few settings here. I'll go over the settings in a moment.
Can you show screen? Show screen.
This one?
Yeah, Phil, if you can hot point that screen.
Oh yeah, I was.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to get it, guys.
Okay, now we can see the three dots.
Yeah. So I clicked here and click on the loco setting, and there is all kinds of settings here. That's for the steam, and for the consist, it's a much less number of settings because these settings would apply to the entire consist and not the individual locomotive. And so if I was to release back, I'll just so I'll try to manage a couple of more locomotives here. I would just, these are like the settings for the diesel. So there's few differences between steam and diesel here. And so let's I'll just since I'm not sharing my slides here, I'll just move on to the next slide here. And so how does LocoFi take it to the next level? Like what is the main differentiators? And this is probably going to be the most interesting slide here. Now we will talk about what we call speed profile. As you can see here in the settings screen, it says scale speed profile, and you can add a new profile. It's already a profile with We named the profile by like track voltage, just to make it easy to remember, so that if you go to different layouts, you just switch to that voltage, and you're just good to go. And your locomotive will adjust to that voltage at scale speeds automatically. And to configure that, I mean, let's try to kind of show you how the process of creating a new speed profile. I click on add speed profile. Let's say I go to a track which has, like 18 volts, and I will, set like the start speed, which is when the locomotive barely, uh, starts moving. And that once you check that, so your locomotive on should be on a track which is like isolated from other locomotives, in the sense it should not bump into them. And so one way to and then you can adjust the sliders to select your start speed. And then you can set a start step delay, which is a setting where you just say, like overcoming the static friction, as in the railroad world. When a locomotive starts, there is this little bit of extra effort that is required, so that kind of can be counted into the start step delay. And then there is this section where you set up a speed table. Now we introduced like 15 speed step table, and we have a special algorithm where you don't have to actually go a large number of speed steps here, configure the speed table, but 15 steps will really give you quite a bit of that. And so you can just have a simple one step. Most of the cases, that's good enough. But if you really want, like locomotives in your consist, like not even move like a centimeter apart, probably that's the one to go for. And then you just we have provided a way in which you can actually time the locomotive on the track, and you just enter the test track length here, and it will automatically calculate the scale speed over here. Or if you actually have like a speed measuring device, you can just directly enter the scale speed and you're done. So if I was to say 7 speed steps, it would show me, 7 uh, uh, boxes here. I just press the play button here, and the locomotive would run, and you can measure the speed. And similarly for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you just lock the speed. You set up like a max scale speed that you want to have for your locomotive, and you're done. This is already set up speed profile. As you can see, I have set the maximum scale speed to be 105, and this is in kilometers per hour. So that's right. Let me just switch back to miles per hour here, and you would see the speeds in miles per hour here, which is 65. It's probably good enough for like a switcher. And you will see the speeds themselves are up to 2 decimal places. Now, these settings were ported from like an older version, so all you see is like zeros for the after decimal. But if you were to measure it now fresh, you can actually enter speeds up to 2 decimals. That really takes it to the next level. And you can have multiple such speed profiles. You can have a speed profile uh, when going in reverse, and you can have a separate speed profile, for example, with high frequency PWM operation that we introduced, one of the features, and which is probably needed for like coreless motors of your, or if your motor is making a lot of hum, but you do lose some smooth speed control over there. But with the fact that we have up to uh, you know like 1,000 speed steps here, that's not a concern anymore. So you can have the prototypical 8 notches. That's what is the default, but you can have like fine granularity of up to 1,000 speed steps. So imagine like the lowest voltage, which is 0, all the way to whatever the track voltage is. You have divided it into like 1,000 steps, and that's the kind of fine speed control you can have. And so we can have up to 8 speed profiles here. And so I told you like they can be created by voltage based on direction and based on like high frequency PWM, or you can have a combination of them. And once you have that setup, now you can take this locomotive to any layout. So if you have configured speed profiles for different voltages, you just take them to whatever layout you want to and switch to that profile and just run it prototypically. And another result of this is the ability to consist. Now, once you have the speed profile set up for a particular layout, set all the locomotives to that speed profile, and consisting is as easy as like 1, 2, 3, really. I'll show you an example of consisting here. So, and another consequence of the speed profiles is auto-sync, auto-syncing of the chuffs. Let's go to the Steam settings. At the bottom, you will see this setting called Scale Model Driver Wheel Diameter. So all you have to do is take out your calipers, measure the diameter of the driver wheel, and enter it here. Once you have a speed profile set up, your chuffs would auto sync. You don't have to do anything. And as you increase the speed, the chuffing would, adjust accordingly automatically. So, then we have this thing where you can set your locomotive to any scale you want. I mean, this is HO87. You may want to as well keep it 1:102, for example, whatever else you want. And, obviously, you can have, miles per hour or kilometers per hour, as the units. We have plenty Canadian customers, and they really like that feature. So. And we talked about the 1,000 speed steps, and we talked about how the speed tables are, up to 2 decimal places, and obviously the chip that we have on board is a very, very powerful microcontroller, and that's the reason it is able to handle up to like a floating point type of calculation, up to 2 decimals, and it really makes the locos sync very, very nicely. Another thing is like the speedometer you see here. This is actually a real-time speedometer. So once you are running your locomotive, the speed that you see here is the actual scale speed that your locomotive is running. Obviously, you need to set up the speed table, and whatever you see here.
How are you measuring the RPM of the axles?
So we are not putting a sensor over there, but we are using the speed table and it's mapping to the speed step, and based on that mapping, we are able to determine the scale speed.
So it's
Is
an
that
estimate.
what
Okay.
the Mike's Train House patent is all about?
I'm sorry, I lost you there.
Don't worry about it. That was an offhand comment.
Oh, yeah, I guess I didn't.
So you're not measuring axle speed. What you're doing is you're inferring the speed based on what speed step you're in and what you set in the table. So
Yes.
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah. And I mean, you can actually, when running, the prototypical like op sessions, you can actually look at the speedometer to actually run your thing. So that kind of helps there. And consisting, I said like consisting is as easy as 1, 2, 3. We can just see it in action here. I'm just gonna release this. So there is this tools menu on the left, which has a bunch of things here. So what I'm gonna do is I'll just unconsist them, and we'll just delete the consist, and we'll have all the locomotives appear here individually. They will just connect back to the same network it was connected to. Just takes a while. They just boot up and come back. And then we'll just go ahead and create the consist. We have the locomotives. We'll just go here. Instead of add loco, we'll do the add create consist. We'll choose. I believe that's what we had. I mean, we can choose anything. So select the locomotives that you want to consist, and the L is the column for the lead loco. Let's say we choose, the Burlington Northern, and let's say the trailing is the ETSF, and we choose the direction. It's facing, and let's say reverse, and we just say, consist. That's it. Now with all the speed profiles already set, that's all it takes to set up a consist. Done. Start finishing up. When the screen refreshes, you'll see the consist. Just takes a while, the locomotives are gonna just boot up, and all the helpers are now actually gonna connect as clients to the lead loco. The lead loco is acting as a client to the access point, but it is acting as an access point to the helper loco. So, I mean, just to give you the insight of it.
Woo.
Yep.
Right. So that's how they know how fast to go. They're getting their commands from the lead loco.
From the lead loco, absolutely.
And when it does that reverse when you go the other direction, you make the reverse when you turn the consist around and the rear loco becomes the lead loco. Does that happen automatically, or do you have to manually do that?
So we don't really say it becomes the lead loco. We can we just say it's going in reverse, and like the bell and the horn and everything would start sounding from the so-called rear loco then.
Okay, got it.
And so that was about creating the consist, and then we have this feature. Let's see here that I was talking about. Auto stop and connection log. It's on by default, but for some reason it's like, I mean, I don't have a good analogy. I usually try to say like you have a all-wheel drive in like a four-wheel drive in your car or Jeep, and where you can engage it or you disengage it kind of thing. So it's by default like on, but for some reasons you want to kind of switch it off, you can switch it off. But what this setting does is, if you ever lose communication with the locomotive, has like a timer built into it, would start up, and if it doesn't hear back from the throttle, it would just stop automatically. So this is really important, especially if you're dead rail, because you can't pull the power plug in dead rail, especially if your locomotive becomes like a runaway or something. So basically, no more runaway locomotives. So if the commands are not reaching the locomotive, it would just stop. Yeah, and one important feature, back from 2018 we had was the haptic controls. I think people are now getting more used to the smartphones, but back in the days when we started in 2018, people would not even want to use smartphones. I know there are still folks out there who do not want to use for running trains, but back then it was a much larger number, and they would say they would accidentally hit a button, or they were scared that that they were probably used to the other apps that were like running on top of DCC, and they had a different way of different feel of where you have to constantly look at the screen to actually run it. But in the case of LocoFi app, you really don't have to look at the screen. And then with the haptic control, when you actually notch up and down, you can you can actually feel the vibration if you want, and you can actually make the sounds of notching if you want, and those are the sounds you will hear on your phone, not in the locomotive. So that's your like cab sounds. Just to give you, so the third item we had over here was the app settings. That's about app settings, and you can enable or disable, these sounds over here. Another thing we can have here is like an emergency stop. This is a pressure sensitive. Uh, so once you're setting this up, if you really hit it hard, it will change the value over here. And that's how hard you need to hit to actually activate emergency stop. You might have seen this, button over here, the bottom left-hand corner. Now, if you actually want to stop your train, by yourself, then you will have to hit it that hard. So accidentally, it will not trigger here. You have to like really hit it that hard to, get it to activate it, and so forth. So, and obviously, these pressure sensitive kind of things. I think not even a tactile sort of control has these kinds of features. So it's all configurable, and we were talking about the lock loco. So what I can do is I can go back. So this is how you disconnect a locomotive from this particular network, and it will again reboot as an access point. So I'm just gonna go back now. Before that, I just want to show you that this MP15 DC is not visible as a network here anymore. So once it refreshes, you will see.
I just have one thing to add. From experience, be sure if you've got a dual gigahertz Wi-Fi to use the 2.5, not the 5 gigahertz channel.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, this is all operating on 2.4 gigahertz.
Experience.
Yeah, 2.4 gigahertz has enough good speeds, and it has actually a larger range of signal. It covers a larger area. So now we don't see it here, and what we are gonna do here is when you switch the screens, it would just refresh, and I would go here and remove loco. Remove loco will actually remove it from this network, and it will again appear as an available network. So it will give you a warning. Are you sure you want to remove the loco from the network? Okay, and it's done. You can see it disappear from the other screen as well. And once you move here, it will refresh, and once it boots up, it will be available as a network. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll just connect to it directly and then go back to the app. It will refresh and it will show me only just this loco. Go to manage, and I don't ask. And if you look at the loco settings here, you will see this lock loco for direct connection only. This is the setting I was talking about. This is the second layer of so-called protection. Like you have a club layout, large layout where you have SSID, a third-party router, and all the locomotives are part of that. Now somebody comes along, they just want to operate their own loco with a direct connection over there, and you do not want anybody else to accidentally add it to the other network. You can just lock your loco, and then it would basically not be available to be added to any other network. So that's the thing. So anyways, so that was the some of the features that kind of set LocoFi apart from the other systems out there. And I'll just go over So if you have any questions about, these demos or
I tell you
uh,
what, why don't Bryce, probably it's a good time to go ahead and break.
Yeah.
Is my suggestion, just because I think we've probably had kind of at a break point. We're about 10:35, 10:40.
oh yeah, yep.
So let's go ahead and do that, and then maybe we can get back together at some point in the future and kind of go through a little bit more, maybe something else specifically around sounds or something like that. Does that make sense? Make
Yep,
sense to everyone
absolutely.
else?
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool.
I will just
Good.
then wrap up with my, whatever slides I had, like just like I'll
Go
probably
ahead.
take
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, one last question.
Mhm.
Android 14, have you
Mhm.
tested it yet?
Android 14 we have not tested, but it should be compatible when we released 13. We made sure that it is approved
Okay.
for 14, but that is something we are yet to test. That was one of the to-do things. Yeah, we'll test it out soon.
My
Thanks
Pixel has just been upgraded.
Yeah, I am getting, the prompts as well, but I just haven't done that. Okay. I'm just gonna go back to this screen here. And, okay, we saw adding a logo. We saw how this application is through multi-train and multi-engineer. We saw the dashboard and we saw the main screen and customizable logo app settings. We saw the multiple speed profiles. We can have them by voltage, direction, high frequency PWM. We can have the same logo, multiple layouts, auto speed matching for consisting, synced charts. You can set your scale and just run prototypically. We call it ultra fine speed control with more than 1,000 speed steps, super accurate scale speeds up to 100th of miles per hour, real time speedometer, easy consisting, and auto stop and connection loss. No more runaway trains, haptic controls, vibration, tap sounds, emergency stop, and lock your loco. So I just wanted to cover this slide, which is the updates that we kind of brought in our last release, which was the Steam firmware release. So we had the Steam supporting module since the beginning of 2022, and only very recently we released the Steam firmware. For all those who had bought the modules at that time, they just needed to update it, and that's all they need to do. And it comes with auto sync chuffs. We saw that. Another thing, I don't know if you guys noticed, I probably forgot to show you. There is we added this feature to mute, unmute, and there is also volume control. If you go into settings, you can find all that. And mute, unmute is like a tiny little icon on the bottom right hand corner. I'm not just going to share that screen again. So just maybe I'll show you a screen later. And we added the 15 speed step table. Once we added like up to 2 decimal speeds, I think it was time to add the 15 speed step table. It should really make for super accurate speeds. And we added the high frequency PWM operation. We added the about box, and the sounds will come from rear loco when running a consistent reverse. We talked about that. And now, when the loco boots up, for example, we added a small feature where it could blink lights, so that sometimes customers would say, how do I know whether the locomotive is booted up or it should be available as a network? So this is one way to know. And we added some UI features for finer controls, and we just moved around some menu items or more easily accessible menus, and we added support for Android 13 plus. So it should be good until Android 15, but we will test it out and let you know. So yeah, what does LocoFi offer? I mean, basically reiteration of what we just talked about. Uh, Innovation, like we bring it to you first, and we are the first ones to bring about this revolution using Wi-Fi and onboard sounds. And we talked about that, and we bring simplicity. You don't need complicated systems. And another aspect of simplification is easy to use. So it's not just easy to wire and install, it's just easy to use as well. It's intuitive, and you can run everything from one screen, like multiple trains, very easily. It comes with flexibility. You can use so much of your own equipment to integrate. We do not sell any of that actually, and you're just free to use whatever is available out there. And it's pretty much like home router is available in every house. Everyone has a smartphone. We do not want you to buy extra stuff and extra power supplies, custom power supplies, and all that. And scalable, I mean, scalable in many different levels. Like scalable in terms of having large layouts. It's scalable in terms of like we keep adding features.
I want to thank you as a user. I want to thank you very much.
Sure. And pricing, like we sell direct to customers, and that way we are able to pass on all the savings. And we obviously offer various discounts, like we put up some sales from time to time. But one important discount is the NMRA member discount, and effectively, if you use that, you're helping the hobby because we kind of have to put it back into NMRA. And we sell our modules fully loaded, not like we separate. We sell different parts separately. I mean, it's a sound module, comes with speaker, pre-wired, very good speaker and everything, so and optimized. And technology, we already saw on the front of technology. It's an IoT device. You can integrate so many more things, and you will see in future when we add more products, they will be all seamlessly integrated into the same ecosystem. And obviously, you can obviously have your own things also added to it and customize the actions that can be taken with them. And whenever we design something, we come out with any features. At the heart of it is prototypicalness. Like we always center prototypical, and then we design a feature around it. So, and I have this. I mean, if we probably maybe towards the end, if you have like a minute or two, I can just quickly go through the website. To show you two important pages, like the videos where you can have customer testimonials you will see, and then there is a forum where you can can search through some of the posts, or you can go through the categories and what people like customers have posted their installs and their videos and all those things, and even sounds and some other stuff, just to kind of easy to navigate. And so finally, I just wanna thank you. Now you have some idea of what LocoFi is and what it has to offer and how you can benefit from it. And you can start by asking yourself, like if you want more than what you have, or I mean, obviously you have to sometimes go out of your comfort zone or beyond that, or you have to see, like what are the costs involved and so on. So yeah, with that said, I want to thank you for being such a patient and wonderful audience. And you saw the website that we had and the email address. So if there is still any questions, I'll take that. Thank you.
I want to say a good thank you. This is really the best presentation I've seen.
Great, thank you. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, and anytime, like if you have any questions, anyone, just reach out to that email address. I mean, we are more than happy to answer that.
I have four of the modules. I just need to get beyond installation on steam locomotives.
Okay.
Are you running cold rail or dead rail, Ken, or are you running with power? powered
No,
rail?
I'm running DCC still because I have a lot of engines, diesels that I haven't
Ah,
converted.
okay. So you've only converted a subset of your power. Okay.
I do
But by
see,
the way, it works fine with the DCC power. I've simplified the wiring, so it's basically just the bus to the track sections.
Right. But you still have to deal, unless you have dead rail, you still have to deal with powering frogs and so on. So, and reverse loops and so on, as long as you've got a powered rail.
Yeah, simple shelf layout. None of that
Oh, good.
stuff.
From the standpoint of a keep alive, do you have keep alive points where a keep alive can be added on? You have like internal power points where a keep alive can be added on?
um, I can point you to those points on the board. It's right after the bridge rectifier, those four
Right, right.
diodes. Yeah, but we haven't really exposed them as yet. I mean, whatever the last shipment we had, we still have that in stock. So before we go and design a new board.
Yeah. But it's just, I
But
was thinking, Seth Newman did a keep alive module that, is based on some circuitry and some chips. He's selling it just as a circuit board and you can stuff it. And it'd be interesting to say, well, if you had one of those, where could you plug it into? Because that kind of solves the frog issue, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
can anyone see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a tiny bridge rectifier. It's a 2 amp bridge rectifier. If you the power supply, if you put it through this, then you can add a keep alive right after this before you power the module, like in parallel.
Right. Yeah.
So this is not really big. So for now, I mean, without having the points or even doing any much soldering, this is easier to just do this.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, that would be a great idea.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that, I keep waiting for is someone to have a really good small circuit board that basically can take input voltage on one side, connect to a battery, and connect to, either your device or any other decoder that is wireless, just as a node, because it strikes me that if you've got a battery that lasts even 15 or 20 minutes, half an hour, it doesn't need to be a huge battery. If you just DC power your mainline tracks and a few yard tracks, all of a sudden it's picking up power whenever it's in those areas. The only time it's unpowered is in the areas that are hard to power, like around a turnout or something like that. So, it seems to me that there's some interesting ways to get this where it becomes really easy, especially if you're doing a layout where you're only going to have, 10 or 15 locomotives starting with.
We have this product in the works. We call it Amrit, and it charges off the rail, and whenever the power is available from the tracks, it will disconnect and it will just charge the battery. Whenever the power is cut off from the track, the battery would start operating the module. We're still in the works. We're designing it, and eventually we will be integrating that product with our module so that you can actually switch on and off that device, the module, from your phone itself, rather than having to have like a reed switch and all those things. So
That's
that
exciting.
yep.
That is really exciting.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
The
having
less wiring that I have to do.
the better. Yeah. I think having a companion battery support would complement this really, really well. Then you just have to, as Phil says, you just have to wire some places where you can charge. I was thinking that if I was running steam, I'd put the charge areas under the water tower. So I have to force my operators to stop under the water tower for 10 minutes and they recharge, or if it's a diesel, they have to go to the fueling station and refuel or something like that to add to the operating interest.
Yep.
Yeah.
On my layout, I have an engine ready line where locomotives wait assignment before moving out in operations. And that's the perfect place to wire for recharge.
Yeah. How fast does it recharge? I mean, does 1 minute of recharge give you 1 minute of operation, or what's that ratio? Do you know? I don't know how quickly the batteries charge from the rails.
You asking me?
Yeah, I just wondering if anybody knows, if anybody's, because I'm thinking that, you know, if the batteries charge quickly, as Phil says, you may not need any more than 15, 20 minutes worth of charge. And that makes for a tiny battery pack that you can start putting in almost anything.
Right.
Yeah, usually it's about an hour. I mean, on average. So the bigger the battery, the more
Sure.
more you can charge. The smaller the battery, you charge it with the smaller current. On an average, it comes to about an hour to charge it very safely. You can also do it like half an hour, but I wouldn't go faster than that.
Yeah,
But
you don't have. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, if you think about even a fairly large layout, you know, you probably have maybe 7 or 8 segments between towns.
Mhm.
All you have to do is solder the rail joiners between some of those, drop a couple of drops off, run a 12-volt bus that's connected to buy one of those 12-volt 30-amp power supplies for $28 from Amazon. Connect the 12 volts up to that, connect it up to those, just basically block them out at the end where the turnouts are. The turnouts are dead. And if you power those and you power your yard tracks, you're probably talking about 15 drops to do on your layout. I mean, this is the trade-off I'm thinking.
Oh
You're
yeah.
building a layoff and you do 15 drops, 20 drops on your layout, connect them to a couple of 16 amp or 16 gauge wires running 12 volts around the layout, or 14 amp, whatever, 14 gauge, whatever you want. You do that once. And if you've got that module, you take away the biggest disadvantage of dead rail, which is how do you charge the engines, et cetera, et cetera. How do you turn them on and off and all that kind of stuff?
The fitting.
And if you've got the ability to turn the engines off, and one of the things that I'm impressed about is there becomes some interesting things about, do you have a universal command that says shut the layout off? And that takes all the locomotives on your list and sends them one command and says shut down until you're told to turn on again. Or you can even do it where they're turn off, and if the power comes on, they all of a sudden turn on and start looking around.
Right.
So when you turn on the DC power, you leave the engines on the DC. I mean, there's all sorts of interesting things. What's really interesting about the technology underneath this, you don't have to change a lot to make all those things work. Once you've got that, they're all almost software features.
Yep.
So that's what's intriguing.
No, that's going to make it. That's going to simplify for most people having independent control of their locomotives without having to do cab wiring. They just have to wire the bus, and you don't have to wire turnouts. I swear I spend most of my time running, soldering frogs and wiring to the tortoise or the servo switch or whatever, blah blah blah. That's where all the wiring time goes. So if I can eliminate that and just drop a few feeds so I can charge the batteries under operation, that's the future.
I think that's kind of almost nirvana if you think about it. It's because it's everybody talks about, I don't want to do wiring. You don't want to do the complex wiring where you've got to know that this wire and this wire. If you're just wiring up 2 tracks that are 7, 8 feet long between towns and dropping one lead off them and connecting them to 12 volts, you do that once, it's pretty easy to do. And you do it with Wagos, you don't even solder under the layout.
Yeah, this is the Amrit module I was talking about.
No, exactly.
This is it's like very tiny form factor, and even with a tiny battery in there, it can last like 1 to 5 minutes. And the way it would be designed is, if you just have space, replace it with a bigger battery, and you can have literally dead rail. So,
cool.
For those of us who can only afford a small bedroom layout, this type of solution actually works quite well. And it means just not having to spend hours underneath the layout.
No question.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, I was an early adopter. I bought one of these units, I think, after the first presentation that Parish made. And you know, it's evolving. I'm really excited about this, except I haven't been able to get back to I tore my layout apart and haven't been able to get back to running anything.
Mhm.
I mean, if you have time, I can show this video. We did a dead rail presentation on another channel, and I kind of showed what the custom sounds and
I tell you what, Chris, let's do this. I'm thinking about trying to have a dead rail, do one of these all about dead rail. And I was actually going to ask Steve from the New Tracks. They've been doing dead rail by using basically the electrical circuits out of $30 RC cars. You know, so what they do is basically you tear the RC car apart and you take the circuits out of the RC car and put it in your locomotive. You take the handheld controller and tear it apart and put it in a little box so it looks like a throttle or like a cab. And now you basically have a $30, $20 to $30 wireless control, and they're doing it with batteries, so it's basically a remote. The problem is the cheap ones are only about 4 volt. They're like 3.7 volts, so it works for ON30 small engines going very slow. But anyway, you know, I want to talk about some of the different options for this. So why don't we hold that for next time, if that makes sense?
Oh yeah. No,
I'm coming on. There isn't. We're hitting on 2 hours, and I kind of think that's about the right time for these. Cool. Well, I want to thank everyone, and
we need bio breaks very soon.
yeah, I know. I think it's just time, and well, people commit off to their next meeting and things. So, thanks very much. It was great just having everybody's interest in this. I took a bunch of notes. I'll send you on it, and you know, I think it's great to see the interest. You know, clearly, we need to get you signed on as for the show, for the PCR convention, and maybe even be a sponsor there. So it's because I think that's going to be a fun to talk to a lot of folks and kind of grow the community. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks
for
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye now.
Bye-bye.